Good morning, everybody, and a very warm welcome to this year's Cannock Chase Annual Conference. My name's Frances Beattie, and I chair the Cannock Chase AONB Joint Committee. I'm also a Cabinet Member on Stafford Borough Council. Inga Anderson, who's the Executive Director of the UN Environment Programme and the Under Secretary General of the UN, has set out a frightening picture of the consequences of failing to address climate change. This ran alongside the awful news about the Ukraine this week as two devastating issues for humanity to face. A more positive part of his report lies in his suggestion about protecting the health of plants. And he says, backing nature is the best way to adapt to slow climate change. Humanity has spent centuries treating nature like its worst enemy. The truth is that nature can be our savior, but only if we can save it first. And really, one of the themes of this conference today is how we manage to make people have real access onto Cannock Chase, but at the same time not to destroy the very beautiful thing that we've set out to manage. First of all, I'd like to say how sad we can't welcome you in person. These conferences every year are a wonderful way to meet each other, and we very much hope that next year we can come together and share with you in person everything that goes on in this beautiful area. I want to begin by thanking everyone for their continued cooperation and support towards the AONB during these difficult times, particularly to Ian Marshall and the AONB team that he leads, to my fellow members on the Joint Committee, and the wider partnership that helps to drive our work. As you'll hear in a moment in our review of the year, despite the challenges, we've continued to deliver across a broad range of activities. So moving on to national matters, Julian Glover, who has written his very powerful report reviewing the protected landscapes of national parks and AONBs, the government's now published its long-awaited response to the report that he produced, and we've welcomed that publication. The Glover Review is the first major review of protected landscapes since they were created over 70 years ago. So it is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to ensure that our protected landscapes will deliver benefits for people, nature, heritage and landscape for years to come. We're up for the challenge to do more, but in order to do so, the government needs to address the utterly inadequate funding of AONBs. It cannot be right that the combined annual budgets of all 34 England AONBs are less than the budget of just one national park. This 12-week consultation closes on Saturday, the 9th of April, and we do urge everyone to have their say. We'll be preparing our own detailed response after the Joint Committee on the 26th of March. I welcome the indication that the government is increasing its commitment to protected landscapes, and that's in the form of the Farming in Protected Landscapes programme that was launched in July last year. For the first time, we can offer financial support to farmers and land managers across the Chase for projects that deliver environmental access and business outcomes. We need to remember that Cannock Chase is a lived-in and managed landscape. Around 200 farmers and other land managers make a living from the land and growing food and timber. The pictures, the rolling programme of pictures very well demonstrated that just before the show began. This beautiful landscape that we want to protect has been shaped by farmers and land managers over hundreds and thousands of years. So it's wonderful that we now have some funds to work with them to ensure that Cannock Chase stays a special place. And lastly, I would like to remind you that we continue to offer our Sustainable Development Fund for community projects that support our core purpose to conserve and enhance the natural beauty of Cannock Chase. We supported 150 projects over the 16 years we've been running the fund. So please, if you've got any ideas for projects and would like some financial support, do get in touch with the AONB team. And on that positive note, I'm going to hand you over to Ian Marshall to give a review of the activities. But before I do, I absolutely always have to share with you, and do again today, some housekeeping rules. They're rather different from the ones we do in person. The first, there are plenty of opportunities for Q&A sessions during the day. Attendees can type questions into the Q&A box, but into the Q&A box, please, not the chat box, at any time, and we'll get to as many as we can. We'll circulate answers after the conference for any we don't get to today. And second, we'll be recording the session. We are recording the session. Attendees can't be seen or heard, and so won't be visible in the recording. And so to Ian. Ian's one member and the leading member of the small AONB team, alongside Richard, Julia, and now Colin, who are all here today, that delivers the AONB's work programmes with the support of a wide range of partners. Ian, can you please give us your review of the year? You'll need to turn on your sound and video. Thanks.
Thank you, Francis. Just bear with me. Hopefully get the technology to work. It's always the worrying thing, isn't it? Okay. I hope you can all see that.
Yep, that's great, Ian.
Thanks, Anna. Right, good morning, everybody. As Francis said, sorry that we can't be with you in person, but I think this is quite a good arrangement. So what I want to cover with you in my review of the year, there might be some people on the call who don't really understand the AONB partnership and how we operate. So I'm just going to very briefly summarize that. I'll then go on to explaining the operating context that we've been working within in this financial year. And then most of my talk is going to be around what we've been doing. And when I say we, it's the royal we. It's not just the AONB team. It's the partners that that make up the AONB partnership. Then what's coming up for the year ahead, and finally, I'll be pleased to take your questions about what you've seen in my presentation. So first, briefly to explain, we are a partnership. At the centre is the Joint Committee, the decision-making body comprising the elected members of the 5 constituent local authorities. We then have a working group of officers from the local authorities and statutory agencies who come together to provide a steer and support for the Joint Committee. We then have 4 different task and finish groups looking at things like land management, heritage, landscape, and visitor management, who work together to implement the activities and the projects that we want to deliver. And as Francis said, we're a very small team. The core is 2.6 FTE, and we've now been joined by Colin, who's working on the Farming in Protected Landscape programme. We have one core purpose, which is to conserve and enhance the natural beauty of the Chase, and we have a legal requirement to produce a 5-yearly management plan that sets out our vision and our activities. And here's the thing, we have no powers to deliver that vision. So we have no planning powers. We're not the planning authority. We have no control over the use or the management of the land within the AONB. So we have to deliver everything that we want to do through cooperation, through partnership, and through collaboration. In terms of how we're funded, we're 75% funded from DEFRA, 25% from the 5 local authorities. And in this financial year, our budget is just over £192,000. It's been a challenging year. I mean, not just for us, obviously for everybody. Hopefully we're coming through COVID now, but it has had a big impact on our ability to deliver, not just for us, for our volunteers, also for our partners. And I think generally the impact of COVID has been that it's taken everything a lot longer to actually deliver. Unfortunately, one member of the team has been off ill for 6 months. And when you're a small team anyway, that also has a big impact. So for 6 months, we've been down to just 1.6 members of staff. The Farming in Protected Landscapes program is very, very welcome. We're delighted to have it, but we had to go from 0 to having it up and running within the matter of a couple of months, and that was a really big ask to get that up and running. Our budget for this year, I just mentioned £192,000. That's the 14th year in a row that it's been static. I'm sure there's a very clever person on the call who can work out for me the reduction in real terms that represents. I mean, put it in the Q&A. But in December, DEFRA found some spare change down the back of the sofa, which they offered to AONBs, and we were allocated £36,000 to our core grant as a top-up, and we've been busy trying to spend that, and I'll tell you about those projects a little bit later. And then Frances mentioned in her introduction the Glover Review. The government has finally responded to the Glover Review, and we're just considering the implications of that and how we want to respond ourselves as an AONB. So I'm just going to provide a very quick snapshot of some of our activities. I can't relay all of them to you, and apologies to our partners if I've misrepresented you in any way or left anything out. But we'll start with work around enhancing the landscape quality and distinctiveness. As I mentioned, we're not the local planning authority, but we do have a planning protocol in place with the relevant local planning authorities, whereby we are consulted on development proposals that might impact on the natural beauty of the AONB or in its setting. And this is Julia's remit. So she's been very busy assessing just over 100 development proposals this year. The number's probably gone up. And she's made recommendations to the relevant local planning authority on 47 of those. So that in itself is a very big chunk of work. As you all know, the Commonwealth Games is coming to town this year, and Cannock Chase Forest is holding the mountain biking event on the 3rd of August. And we've been working with our partners and with the Commonwealth Games Organising Committee to make sure that that event doesn't have any lasting impacts from the 12,000 spectators that are anticipated to come on that day. We've continued some work that we started over a year ago with CPRE Staffordshire, trying to raise awareness of dark skies. Cannock Chase has the very unfortunate record of being the most light polluted of any of England's 34 AONBs. Perhaps not surprising given our geography and where we are. And following on from the star count that the CPRE promote every year, Julia's been preparing a good lighting guide, which will be for developers, householders, businesses, and local authorities to try to encourage ways to reduce light pollution still further. We have a highways design guide, which is very out of date. It's 2005, and Julia has been working with Staffordshire County Council highways colleagues to update that document. And then the last thing I wanted to mention was HS2. You'll know that the HS2 route comes to the north of Cannock Chase. Let me just see my cursor. So the AONB boundary runs along here, and this is the route of HS2 here. It will be going across the valley on a viaduct, so it'll have quite a high visual impact. And Julia sits on the Trent Sow HS2 group along with other partners that's trying to look at design ways to make sure that the railway line integrates into the landscape. And also as part of that, HS2 Limited have allocated £1.5 million to 6 local environmental enhancement projects. And you may have seen this covered in the press in the last couple of days. That was issued as a press release announcing those projects. So they're about to start. So they will enhance the landscape, preserve the historic environment, improve access, and create new wildlife habitats. So we look forward to those taking place over the next few years. Turning to environmental land management, I mean, as we've already said, we're delighted to be able to deliver the government's new Farming in Protected Landscape programme. So this is a 3-year programme. It's part of the government's agricultural transition plan as we move from the common agricultural policy to a local UK agricultural policy. So it's there to support farmers and other land managers to deliver outcomes for nature, for improved access, for climate change, and for more sustainable farm businesses. And we're lucky we've got Colin Manning on board with us now. Colin started in October and has very, very rapidly had to get up to speed with all the nuances of this entirely new programme. We have a local assessment panel chaired by a local farmer, Mary Cope, that assesses applications above £5,000 in value. We reckon that there are about 200 farmers and land managers in the AONB and within a 1 kilometre donut around the area. And we've written to all of those individually, making them aware of the programme and encouraging them to apply. And this financial year, we've supported so far 4 projects, spending about £80,000. The funding allocations for Cannock Chase for years 2 and 3 have got to be confirmed by DEFRA, but we're looking at something like around £288,000 being available through this programme next financial year alone. So if there are any farmers or land managers on the call, please get in touch with us and Colin will be pleased to have a chat with you about the programme. This is just a slide to show the one of the 4 successful projects this year. It's just off the Penkridge Road opposite Birches Valley. Comprises 2 fields primarily grazed by sheep and cut for hay. Sometimes the fields are used as a pop-up campsite as well. It's quite an exposed piece of land, visually prominent next to a busy road. And we're able to fund improvements to the hedgerows within and on the boundary of the land. So there'll be gapped up hedgerow planting and new trees. There's some new tree planting in these small areas, and a new orchard is being planted in one corner of the plot, and the field boundaries are being improved as well. And this project is going to involve, it's being delivered by the farmer and his wife, but it's also going to involve homeless young men in maintaining the orchard, and also local school children will be able to come onto the site to learn where their food comes from. So nice little example of the type of project that we're funding through FIPL, as we call it. Moving on to work we've been doing around the historic environment. If you go out walking on the Chase, you might know that or see that there are a number of places where there seem to be quite large numbers of apples. And we've been wondering, why is this? Why do we seem to have these apples located in specific places? They particularly seem to be concentrated around the 2 great war camps which existed on the Chase 100 years ago. So Chase Through Time volunteers, supported by the Friends of Cannock Chase and Shane, the County Council's archaeologist, have been looking into this. I think they've recorded about over 90 individual trees now, and they're getting these analysed with the National Fruit Collection to try to identify what varieties they are. So it's a nice little project around the social history of Cannock Chase. We've almost finished now. It seems to have been a long time in the making, but we've been working with local groups around improving the interpretation at a couple of historic sites. So one is around Brindley Heath, former military hospital site from the Great War, which was then converted into a village for mining families, and also the RAF Hensford military training camp from World War II. So we've been improving the interpretation there, and new panels will be going up, new leaflets will be produced as well. And then with the again with the Friends of Cannock Chase and local photographer Steve Welsh, we've been looking at the fantastic resource of old photographs and postcards that go back 150 years on Cannock Chase, and they provide a beautiful window into what the landscape looked at that time. And so we've been trying to locate where the views were taken from, where the images were taken from. And Steve's been going back out to take a modern day photograph so we can compare them side by side and see how the landscape has changed over the years. And we hope to publish that at some point during this year. And then lastly, just moving back to RAF Hensford, this is a project that the County Council has delivered. And it's part of the RAF Hensford's notorious assault training course. And there's this old section of wall that the unfortunate recruits had to scramble over. It's one of the last few surviving upstanding remains on RAF Hensford. And you can see the condition of it on the left-hand image. And then it was improved with targeted brick replacement, repointing and capping works. And that was funded through the Countryside Stewardship Scheme that operates on most of Cannock Chase Country Park. Looking at wildlife, Gentle Shore Common is managed by the Staffordshire Wildlife Trust, and that is in the third of a 6-year programme of improvements that's funded through National Grid's Landscape Enhancement Initiative. So that's funding £192,000 of investment into the common in terms of improving habitat and access. Staffordshire County Council on Cannock Chase Country Park have started a grazing trial at Moors Gorse. So those of you who have walked through Moors Gorse will have seen 6 Hereford cattle between August and November last year. They've been doing a great job in terms of opening up the vegetation to encourage the delicate heathland plants to thrive a bit better. And it's gone down well with the public. There have been some very positive comments. Other things that have gone on the country park, there's been some scrub clearance to encourage the heather again. There's been trialing of new machinery that cuts and collects heather in a better way. And also there have been some scrapes created in order to encourage insects and basking reptiles and so on. In September last year, we had a training day organised by the Woodland Trust, hosted by the National Trust at Shugborough, to raise awareness of the various veteran trees that still survive on Cannock Chase. That was really informative, and we hope to roll that out again, possibly have another tree training day for owners of the 13 or so private historic parklands on the Chase, and also to train volunteers to encourage to record more veteran trees. We don't know where they all are, and we need to fill that gap so that we can look after these wonderful historic assets. Richard commissioned a audit of the invertebrates on Cannock Chase, and that has revealed that we have over 2,500 species of invertebrates recorded on Cannock Chase over the last 25 years. Huge resource. And of those, 226 are legally protected or threatened and are nationally important. So we've made that information available to the landowners to make them aware so that they can take it into account in their conservation of the land. The West Midland Ringing Group have done some fantastic work over the past 3 years, looking at breeding nightjars, and they've recorded some wonderful video footage of fledgling chicks, and also some quite disturbing stuff of dogs treading on nightjar nests, which is unsettling to see. Since 2019, they've recorded 98 individual nightjars across the Chase. They seem to use both the heath and also plantation clearfell areas. And we're supporting them to write up that fantastic record so that it's available for landowners to understand what's happening on their land. And then lastly, we've been doing some work around the 5 local geological sites which exist on Cannock Chase. Richard recruited a geological expert to go out and assess their condition. That hadn't been done for a number of years, and she found that 3 of them are in good condition. One's in an unfavorable state and one required further investigation. It was so overgrown in vegetation that she couldn't actually get to the quarry face to have a look at it. And again, that's produced reports, and those have been passed on to the landowners. If you're interested in geology, there is something called the Cannock Chase Geo Trail, which is available as a leaflet. You can find it in the publications section of our website. It's 36 kilometers long if you want to walk the entire length of it, so that'll keep you quiet for a weekend getting around that. We've done a whole raft of work around improving the visitor experience on Cannock Chase. So we've been working with the SAC partnership in terms of ongoing plans to improve visitor infrastructure. We've also been working with Forestry England around their Ride with Respect campaign, introduced a new Cannock Chase code, which I'm not going to go into detail because that will spoil Kinga's presentation this afternoon. And then we've been doing a whole range of work. For example, there are 7 promoted walks on the AONB, and Dick Turton from the local Ramblers has been revisiting these to refresh them. We've decided to remove 2 of them because they're in sensitive parts of the chase, but we're going to redo the leaflets for the other 5 and possibly also create a couple of new walks. And which we're, again, I'm not going to preempt what Peter Farmer's going to talk about this afternoon with the Cannock Chase Place brand, but the look and the feel of the products that we're producing now is changing. The old AONB material is rather tired and outdated now, and we're using this new Cannock Chase Place brand to provide consistent messages across all of the different products. So we've got a new visitor welcome leaflet in preparation. We've refreshed the AONB base map that goes across all of our products. On the right hand side here, you can see the look and feel of the new interpretation panels that are going on or going to be installed at RAF Hensford and Brindley Village, and we've used artists to illustrate old images and bring them to life. This is the look and feel of the new AONB promoted leaflets that we're developing with Dick and the Ramblers. And then if I get time, or I'll make time, we're going to produce a new souvenir guidebook that explains what's wonderful about Cannock Chase. So that gives you an example of some of the things we're doing. In terms of supporting communities and businesses, our fixed point photography project, I think it's now in its 17th year. That's still going. The Great War Hut had to close because of COVID, but our volunteers have made sterling efforts to clean all the artifacts, to get it reopened again. I think it was reopened at August Bank Holiday last year. You probably also know there is a small information hut opposite Milford Common, and that's been closed for a couple of years, but Rob Stanley and a group of volunteers are making sterling efforts to get it reopened, and we're going to support them with some new interpretation within the hut. We're doing a project with the SAC partnership to raise awareness with children and young people. I'm not going to go into detail about that because Kinga's going to cover that. And then lastly, as Francis mentioned, we still have our Sustainable Development Fund. We've awarded 4 projects this year. Apples on the Chase is one of them, which I mentioned earlier. We're supporting Staffordshire Wildlife Trust to update their interpretation on Gentleshore Common. We're supporting Brockton Parish Council with some nature improvements in Brockton Park. And then we're supporting the West Midland Bird Club with their latest 5-yearly bird survey. And I was looking back in the records of this, and this is quite remarkable. This is the 7th, I think it's at least the 7th consecutive 5-year bird survey. So they started in 1992 and they've kept it going every 5 years. So hats off to the West Midland Bird Club for continuing that really invaluable work, because we can start, you can really see trends over a 30-year period in terms of what's happening to bird populations. And then finally, in terms of what's been happening, the Joint Committee has adopted the National AONB Art Strategy, which is trying to promote connections, to connect people better with nature through the arts. We've commissioned consultants to look at the inclusion and diversity on the Chase. So how welcoming is Cannock Chase for people? Are we excluding certain groups of people? We've commissioned a specialist consultants to prepare a baseline of our carbon emissions across the Chase with a view to seeing if we can become net zero. And then we've also been refreshing the AONB website. That's work in progress. So those last three are all being funded through this extra DEFRA cash that we've had. We wouldn't have been able to progress them without that extra money. So we're very grateful for that. So that's a very, very rapid snapshot of what we've been doing. In terms of priorities for this coming year, obviously we need to consider the government's response to Glover and feed in our views and deliver what comes out, what the government is going to do about that, and deliver what they put in place. The diversity and inclusion study, we will need to consider that and implement recommendations, and similarly with the findings from the carbon reduction assessment, and that will feed into the development of a climate change adaptation and mitigation plan for the Chase. We have a workshop next week with local artists just to make friends and see what's happening and see if we can collaborate on any local arts projects on the Chase. We need to do a whole piece of work around nature recovery, feeding into the local nature recovery strategy that Staffordshire County Council will now have to produce for Staffordshire. We hope to do a piece of work around adders. The Chase is important for adders, but there hasn't been a survey of them for a number of years, and we need to see how they're faring and what conservation measures we need to put in place. We've had the preparation of a heritage strategy on a back burner, really. We need to bring that up to the fore now and finish that off and prepare an action plan. And then lastly, we obviously, with the Commonwealth Games coming, we need to make sure all those visitor welcome products that I set out to you are ready out in the visitor centres and out with local businesses, so that all the 12,000 people who are going to come to Cannock Chase can pick up leaflets and booklets and see what a wonderful place Cannock Chase is. Thanks very much, Francis.
Thank you very much, Ian. It's a snapshot, but it is amazing what a small team with all the partners and all the volunteers is actually able to do each year. It's really impressive, and I'm full of admiration. Can I just say that the TNM, the team, provide regular updates on the work of the partnership that goes to the Joint Committee. And the Joint Committee meets 3 times a year in March, July and December. If you want to hear any more, you can either attend the meetings in person or you can read the papers and minutes. Sounds rather a dreary thing to do, that are published on the AONB website. But I would recommend, if you want to come along, you're most welcome to do so. We've now got question time, and I'm going to hand over to Ian, Julia, and Richard as sort of panelists to take any questions that there may be.
Hi, well, the first question that we've got here actually is about the Dark Skies Guide. And Ben Bradley has asked where we can access the Dark Skies Guide for our neighbourhood plan. And I think probably I can actually just go ahead and answer that. It's a work in progress, and we've been consulting with the local authority partners, and we hope to be finalising and producing it as a completed document in the next few months. So I'm afraid it's not available yet, but in the next few months we should have a document there and available, and it'll be, when it's completed, it'll be up on the AONB website.
Thanks, Julia. Next one.
Next question is, I think one for me. Where can information regarding the invertebrate audit to be accessed. That's on our website on the publication section in the land management and biodiversity bit. There is a species list of invertebrates over the last 25 years, and also there are something called a lost species list, which are ones that we haven't recorded since 1995, but may or may not still be on the chase.
And
Just sorry, Franz, just interrupting there. We probably ought to put the web address on the chat somewhere, oughtn't we, so that people know what it is and they can go on to the have a mooch around and go onto the publications page. So we'll get that on in a minute.
that'd be great. Just
It's
before
there, I've
the
just
next
added it.
one, can I just ask a question that has been worrying me, and I think you're aware that it's been worrying me, and this is to do with the Commonwealth Games. Whilst I appreciate the joys that that the bike riding can bring, and the efforts that Forest England are making to contain both the tracks and the use by the visitors and so forth. What really worries me is the legacy that what we're doing is sending out a message to the world that Cannock Chase is the place to race your mountain bikes around, and I show no disrespect to mountain bikers in saying that, except that we are finding it happening at night, and also in very vulnerable areas for the fauna and flora.
Yeah, I'll respond to that, Francis. I mean, you're right. I mean, there are two aspects when we comment on the Commonwealth Games. There's obviously the actual event itself, which is, one day, potentially 12,000 people coming to it. So that's one issue. And you're right. The second is the legacy. And there are several aspects to that. There's no silver bullet to addressing mountain biking issues. It's a combination of things. We were due to hear from Laura Freer this afternoon from Forestry England about the Ride with Respect campaign. Unfortunately, Laura is ill, so she won't be on the call. But part of that is about raising awareness to the two. There are probably two types of groups of cyclists: the mountain bikers and the family cyclists. A new trail will be a legacy from the Commonwealth Games, which will challenge those people who want, to test their skills and their stamina. I think that's called the Perry's Trail, and that'll be a legacy from the Commonwealth Games on the site at Birches Valley. Other things that have been happening, what was called the Blue Route, which went from Birches Valley up into the Sherbrooke and back round. That speed no longer is promoted as an official cycling trail. And the Forestry England have been monitoring the numbers who use both the Perry's Trail and the Sherbrooke Trail. And early information is showing that the numbers who are using Sherbrooke is declining. So it's not going to happen overnight, but I think, there's a combination of things that we need to put in place to not to stop people coming to Cannock Chase, but when they come, to use it responsibly.
Thanks for that. And just one other thing before the questions come in. You did, Ian, mention the SAC a couple of times. For anybody who's not familiar, can I just say that stands for Special Area of Conservation, and you will hear about that later on, as Ian says. Sorry, over to you. It's Julia, is it, the next question?
Well, I'm just going to add a little question in here that someone has posted about, Tony Pierce is asking, during Ian's talk, he thought it was stated that some of the signs about the harm being done by mountain biking were being removed. Is that correct?
Sorry, the harm?
The harm being done. It's referring to signs about the harm being done by mountain biking, are these being removed?
Okay, yes. So unfortunately, there are some people who take it on themselves to go off piste, as it were, and create their own trails off official bridleways or cycle trails, which is a completely unlawful activity. where that happens, the landowners try as quickly as they can to actually stop it happening and to make good the damage that's caused. That you know, it takes quite a lot of resources to actually physically go out there and remove the bumps and jumps and so on that have been created. So you know, this happened in Brockton Coppice, and unfortunately the rangers have to repeatedly go back and make good the damage that's been caused. Signs have been put up locally as well to tell people about the special importance of these particular places and encouraging them not. But this is all part of the Ride with Respect campaign that Forestry England and partners are going to be launching. And also it's one of the key messages in the new Cannock Chase Code, which I know Kinga is going to, from the SAC partnership, is going to be talking about this afternoon.
Thank you. Next is...
So yes, I'm moving on from that then. There's a question from Jenny Moore about more information on the local arts programme and the workshop for local artists taking place next week. If anybody who's interested in joining that workshop, if they would like to email Cannock Chase AONB, we can send you a link to that. And at the moment, it's really about just starting the conversation with local artists and discovering ourselves what arts and cultural activity is actually taking place in the local area. So yeah, we welcome as many participants as are interested and would like to join us. And yeah, email the AONB and we'll send you some more detail about it.
Richard?
Yes, so I have a question. I note the leaflet mentioning Brindley Village covers the history as a military hospital. The area was a complete self-contained community for over 25 years, longer than its military use. Is this covered or has it been ignored?
Thanks for the question. No, it's not been ignored. We've been working with the Brindley Village Legacy Group in terms of writing the story about Brindley Village. So it covers both, the new interpretation covers both its use as a military hospital and also its subsequent use by the community as a village. So no, definitely both aspects of its history are covered.
Have we got another one?
Yeah, Andy Cowan is asking what steps are being taken on the security of Cannock Chase, especially against fly tipping.
Ooh, right. Well, I mean, fly tipping is the responsibility of the relevant local authority. So I think if people see stuff that unfortunately has been fly tipped, then you need to contact your local street scene, you know, which will be different for Cannock Chase, Stafford Borough, Lichfield and South Staffs, and get in touch with them. I've got a feeling that I did answer this question. There is an FAQ on the AONB website, and I think I did put on there the contact details for each of those local street scenes. So Andy, if you're concerned, have a look at the AONB website, go onto the FAQ. I'll go on there after this call and check to make sure that those contact numbers and web details are there.
Next one.
Yeah, next question is, will there be more opportunities for volunteering on the various initiatives via the AONB unit in the coming year?
I hope so.
Okay, so I picked that one up. So volunteering, yeah. I mean, compared with former years, the AONB unit has kind of refocused its work with volunteers in a way, and we have cut back to a few things because there's no point in duplicating what other organisations already do. So within the AONB, the National Trust have got volunteers. The Staffordshire County Council have got volunteers doing conservation tasks on the chase. Forestry England have got volunteers helping to maintain various trails in Cannock Chase Forest. So there's no point in us duplicating what those organisations do. So our volunteers at the moment are mainly around the fixed point photography. So if anyone is interested in photography and landscape change, then they're very welcome to join that group. We have volunteers who man the Great War Hut and explain to visitors about the military history of Cannock Chase and what life was like for a young recruit, possibly being away from home for the first time. And now with the Milford Hut reopening, there's another opportunity there in the north of the Chase for people to volunteer there to provide a visitor welcome for all the people coming to Milford Common. At the moment, we've not got plans for voluntary activity in any other particular work areas, but that might change, you know, as we develop new activities.
I think it would be very nice to see coordination of the volunteer activities across all the participating organisations and landowners to a greater extent than we have now. But the volunteers do such a wonderful job. The Chase wouldn't be what it is without the work that they do. So any offer is going to be most welcome, and we can direct you to the right place. Thanks for that one. Next one is, Julia, you're covering that?
Yes. So Paul Beecham asked, please can you say a little more about the inclusion and diversity study? How is it being done? What stage is it at? What consultation is being done, and can people participate in it?
Okay, I'll pick that one up. Thanks for your question, Paul. Yeah, so this is a really important piece of work. So you've heard us talk about the Glover review. This was the review of protected landscapes carried out by Julian Glover and a panel. And one of the things that he highlighted in his study was that large parts of society have got no relationship with protected landscapes. Many communities feel that these landscapes hold no relevance for them, and that governance structures are remote and there's a lack of diversity. So we wanted to see, to understand whether or not those findings apply to us here on Cannock Chase. And with this extra DEFRA money we've got, we've just recruited Andrew Meredith Associates and the research solution to carry out a piece of work. So that's going to be asking 4 questions. What's the current situation? Who does and doesn't get the opportunity to visit and connect with Cannock Chase? What does the community think? For those who don't use the AONB, why don't they? And are there barriers, and what are they? Thirdly, what changes are required to make Cannock Chase more welcoming and more accessible to a greater diversity of people? And then the 4th one is looking internally within the governance structure of the AONB partnership. How inclusive and diverse are we? Does our culture need changing, and if so, how? So we've literally just kick-started that study. It'll comprise initially a desk exercise looking at existing policies and documents, and then there will be online consultation and also physical surveys out in the communities around Cannock Chase area. To interviews with people just to see, do they come to Cannock Chase? If they don't, why not, and so on. So yes, there will be opportunities to feed into that study.
Julia, I think we'll take one more question, if that's okay. And I'm really sorry that we can't pick up all the others, but we will respond to every single one and make the response available, I'm sure, Ian.
Yeah, sure. We will pick up all the questions.
To the wider attendees. Do you want to pick one up, Julia?
Yeah, I mean, there's one here. To be honest, I'm not sure that Ian's going to be able to answer this, but when can we expect the ditches and bunding to be renewed at Milford Common and the green at Milford? Because it does need doing to avoid incursion into the area.
You're right, Julia. I don't know the answer to that question.
No.
We'll refer to the county council on that. Can we just take one more then?
There are a couple more on the theme of the mountain biking. And but again, I'm not sure that.
And the
we'll be able
question
to
as to
respond
can you get
directly.
involved in the
So-
ADA survey was one I've seen.
There's one about getting involved in the ADA survey, and there's some concerns that the removal of the Sherbrooke Tower might have been used by ramblers and horse riders, and so perhaps that's a step backwards, and the fact that the trail is still searchable via Google at the moment, and whether that can be changed. I think that's probably all for discussion with Forestry England.
Thank
about
you
how
very
that's
much.
marketed.
So I'll close the question and answer discussion now. And we're really going into the conference theme now. So we've been in a run-up to the actual theme of the conference, which is changing perceptions and behaviours, which I suppose particularly has come about because of the increased interest in using the chase during COVID. So one of the unexpected features of the pandemic was the way in which people turned to protected landscapes in unprecedented numbers for their relaxation and exercise and enjoyment. And the visitor pressure, which is not a new phenomenon, it's been a concern since really Lord Lichfield handed the chase over to the county council and the public sector got closely involved. But during the pandemic, the issues and tensions and the need for management came into much sharper focus. We need protected landscapes like Cannock Chase more than ever for inspiration and to make us feel better. But we also need that the whole community of users identify with the sites, as well as loving it, that they take a pride and ownership in it. We mustn't love the chase to death. It's an easily destroyed place affected by climate change, loss of habitat and degradation and visitor pressure. The visitor uses, as we all know, can include erosion, damage to wildlife habitats, cultural heritage, disturbance to wildlife, wildfires, litter, antisocial behaviour, and this general sense of loss of peace and tranquility. And what is particularly worrying is that many repeat visitors, as well as many new visitors, are simply unaware of the special importance of Cannock Chase for fauna and flora in particular, and they take it for granted. And that's not in the sense of, not in an unpleasant sense, but that it is seen as a place to enjoy yourself without really thinking about the very delicate nature of it. And that's a big job for all of us. Balancing the needs of conservation and recreational demands is going to be a challenging job for all protected landscapes. It's particularly acute on Cannock Chase because of its small size, its location, and its proximity to these substantial urban populations. The Glover Review has strongly advocated encouraging our national landscapes to be healthier, greener, more beautiful places and open to everyone. And the speakers are going to be picking up these themes as we go through the rest of the day. It's important, going back to the government and its policies, that the A&Bs are levelled up with national parks. Their ecological importance is as important as all the national parks, and yet they're given a lowered secondary statutory purpose. It will inevitably be that we have an added purpose of public enjoyment and understanding, so we have to get this right. So it's timely that this is our theme for the year. And with that, I'm going to introduce Mike Dilger to open this part of the conference. He's a broadcaster, he's a naturalist, he's a writer and tour leader. And many of you will have watched and listened to Mike over the last 20 years, shared his encyclopedic knowledge and trademark enthusiasm for nature on TV programs like Britain Goes Wild, Spring Watch, Autumn Watch, Hands on Nature. He's probably best known for his regular appearances as the Wild Man on BBC's The One Show. He covers everything from bumblebees to basking sharks, not basket sharks on that. And he's contributed over 450 films during the show's 10-year run. He also regularly reports on the BBC One's regional affairs programme, which is Inside Out. And what you may or may not know is that Mike was born in Stafford and spent his formative childhood years out and about on Cannock Chase watching its iconic wildlife. Mike, over to you. Please turn on your sound and your video. Look forward to your talk.
Thank you, Frances. I will just share my screen so that you can see my presentation. Good morning, everybody. Fans of Cannock Chase. As Frances said in her lovely introduction there, I am Staffordian, born and bred. I suppose most of you probably know me best for Wanda-la-da-da-da, Wanda-la-da-da-da, Wanda-la-da-da-da. Come to a live studio audience with, back in the day, Adrian Charles and Christine Blakely, and then Matt Baker and Alex Jones, and now Alex Jones and various other people. It's been running, I think, for 16 years, and I've done 15 of those years. A fantastic program to work on. And as Frances said, I've been pontificating on everything from bumblebees to basket sharks, or should I say basking sharks, for the last 15 years. And I reckon I'm probably one of the most traveled people around Britain. I reckon I've been to more places, more corners of the British Isles than David Attenborough himself. Beat that, Sir David. But as Frances also said, what's really important is that I come, where we go, there we go. I'm from Stafford. I was born and bred in Stafford. The place I was born in has now been knocked down. It was just not far from Widdicombe Avenue at Weeping Cross. But I lived for the first 18 years of my life in Stafford. So I am, even though I live now in the West Country, I live just south of Bristol in a lovely place called the Chew Valley. I know Stafford incredibly well, and I consider myself a Staffordian, somebody from the county of Staffordshire. And as somebody from the county of Staffordshire, I'm going to try and just, for some reason, there's slight issues with this box being in the way. Please bear with me. I'm going to slightly shrink this down and then press that and then go back to that. That should be, there we go. Yes, so there we go. So as someone who's born and bred in Stafford, where did I go to watch wildlife? Because I got into wildlife at a really early age. If I turn around and quickly grab this book, this is a book my parents bought me when I was aged 9, which is the age my boy is now. It's Bruce Campbell's Guide to Birds in Colour. And they bought me this book, 256 different British birds. And I thought, I want to become a bird watcher, a naturalist, a presenter. I'm going to try and see every single bird in that book. And, you know, got myself a pair of binoculars and I was off. And there were 3 places I watched wildlife. Doxy Marshes in the centre of Stafford, a Staffordshire Wildlife Trust site. Up at Stafford Castle, where some lovely deciduous woodland near the M6. And also Cannock Chase. Now, I reckon I've been to Cannock Chase on at least 360 different occasions. I did a quick sum when I was preparing my talk this week, and I reckoned that my dad, principally my dad, my mum went as well, took me twice a month for the best part of 15 years. They probably took me when I was earlier, but before the age of 3, I probably wouldn't have remembered much. So I reckon 24 times a year, times 15, I've been to Cannock Chase on at least 360 occasions. It's where I fell in love with wildlife. It's where I cut my teeth as a naturalist. It's the most fantastic place. I mean, look at that beautiful sight in winter. This is a picture of my dad, who departed this planet in 2006. But my dad loved the chase. He also had a terrible sense of direction. So he used to go up to Cannock Chase, he used to take a compass, and we'd march up to Brockton Coppice and try to go to the heathland and get lost, try to get down to the steps and get lost. So one of my abiding memories of my childhood is of being on Cannock Chase with my dad swearing because he got lost on the chase. So it is small, as Ian said, but actually, when you're a kid, it's pretty large, and it's pretty easy to get lost on the chase if you're in the middle of the woodland there. So I have incredibly strong memories of my father and my two brothers and me going to Cannock Chase, getting out of my mum's hair, running around, the wind through my hair because I used to have hair back in the day, and the sun on my face. It was just the most fabulous location. There you go, look at that, Brockton Coppice. What a beautiful spot that is. And many of you know that I recently filmed a little VT, a little film all about Cannock Chase and how beautiful it is, what it means to me, why it's so precious. This is one of the locations that we filmed. It was the site as well where I saw a lot of my wildlife for the first time. It was the very first place where I ever saw deer. And I think it's a nice fallow deer here. You can see those palmate antlers. And imagine as a little boy wandering around the plantations there in the big forest, and all of a sudden you're walking along a woodland ride and you look ahead and you see these big, impressive animals with palmate antlers looking at you. It's a sight that has remained with me forever. I mean, I'm 55 now, so 47 years later, I still remember the first time that I ever saw a deer on Cannock Chase. And this is just by Frieda's Grave, one of probably the best known sites on the Chase, with that beautiful heathland stretching in front of you there. You've got Calluna vulgaris, you've got crowberry, you've got Impetrum nigrum. It's one of the only places in the world where you get the Cannock Chase berry, the hybrid between cowberry and Vaccinium myrtillus as well. Just a beautiful, iconic location. And it's the very first place, of course, where I saw adder, Vipera beryllus. Beautiful snake. I mean, one of my most shocking memories of a kid is seeing someone beating one to death with a stick. And I was just like so mortified by that. I thought, how could you do that to such a beautiful, harmless animal? And in the 360 times that I went up to the Chase, I must have seen adders on 7 or 8 occasions. And it was just always beautiful. You stop there, you admire them, see their tongue come out, and then just disappear off into the undergrowth. How exciting! A snake, and a venomous snake as a kid. It was a memorable moment. I suppose on the one show I'm best known for being a birder, although I've spent the last year traveling all around the UK looking at plants. I'm trying to see 1,000 plants for a book I'm currently writing called 1,000 Shades of Green. No idea where I might have ripped the title off from. A slightly dodgy book with 950 less and a different colour. But I remember seeing stone chats up on the Chase, that little chack, chack, chack of the males as they call to their females. Always see one, or always see a male and female together, unless there's a family party. Very rarely just see one stone chat. And I love the way they kind of land on perches like this post and then just do their funny little wing flick. So it's not just about seeing the birds, it's about appreciating their behavior. Of course, I know Ian and Francis have already talked about the importance of the Chase for nightjar. Can you imagine as a kid persuading your dad to stay late onto the Chase when most people have left Milford Common and gone home, and then going up onto the heathland and listening to this? I don't know about you, but that sends shivers down my spine just hearing it. And I cannot wait for May, because I live near the Mendips and there's some nightjars there, but nowhere near as many, let me say, as Cannock Chase. One of the great places about the site is there's lots of open water. You've got brooks running through Cannock Chase, but you've also got these wonderful kind of lowland heathy mires, which are fabulous for dragonflies. Now, I love dragonflies so much that I'm president of the British Dragonfly Society. But I have probably my strongest memory of being on the chase as a kid is seeing dragonflies flying around, the devil's darning needles, they call them. And as a small child, I was a little bit scared of them. I mean, they're big and they buzz you in the face, and they're kind of full of attitude, and they jerk all over the place. And this is four-spotted chaser. You can see the little four spots on the leading edge of the wing. So it's Libellula quadrimaculata. And that was certainly one of the species that I would have seen when I was a kid, when I went to those heathy pools in May and June. The habitat, of course, is fantastic. You've got the lovely birchy woodland, you've got the wet woodland, you've got the oak woodland of Brockton Coppice. And as a birder, going here in spring, it's just an amazing place. I mean, willow warbler is one of those birds that when you're first starting to get to know the birds is really, really difficult. It looks very similar to another Philoscopus, the chiff-chaff. But of course, the chiff-chaff goes chiff-chaff, 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 and it's got slightly darker legs, whereas the willow has got the most beautiful call. And when you never go into the birch woodland and the edge of the oak woodland, this is the song that you hear when you're on the Cannock Chase in May. Just the most beautiful song. That lilting downward cadence just does it for me. So as a kid, I think hope you can read that. I thought the chase was massive. I thought it was one of the biggest places on the planet. It's like the Amazon rainforest. It was like the Okavango Delta. It was huge, but as we all know, it's not quite as big as it might appear. And as people will be able to talk much more ably than me, it's a site with a lot of pressure. There's a huge number of people using Cannock Chase. And as Frances said in their introduction, just shortly before she asked me to come and speak, a lot of the people there are not like me. A lot of them don't want to see stone chats and four-spotted chasers and don't know about the nightjar, aren't bothered about the Cannock Chase berry. The chase means a lot of things to a lot of different people, which is great. I mean, I'm not saying that what I do is best. I personally think it is. Watching wildlife is the finest hobby on the planet, and it beats climbing in trees or horse riding or riding bikes. But I'm well aware of the fact that, you know, not everyone digs what I do. So the chase is in demand by so many people. Lots of car parks. I know the car parks are an issue in Cannock Chase. When I made the piece of the film, I was told that they're trying to rationalize the number of car parks, trying to put car parks in certain areas where a number of cars can park, and trying to get rid of those small impromptu car parks by the side of the road. Please, you've got to do that. I can say this because I don't work for Cannock Chase. I don't work for the AONB, but you've got to stop people parking where they want. It's a really difficult situation on the chase because what happens is people are inherently lazy. They will not walk far from their car, but some people will, people like me, or the West Midlands Bird Group, or lots of people, or people like my friend Anne Elphick will walk all over the chase. But a lot of people inherently don't go far from their car. So if you limit where they can park, then all of a sudden you limit the disturbance in the most sensitive areas. It's not rocket science. So I was really excited to hear that they're trying to limit these occasional pullover car parks and stop people parking there and make them go to the proper car parks. We're not trying to, or not we, you're not trying to limit their access to various locations. You can go wherever you want on the Cannock Chase. That's the joy of it, but make them walk there. And by making them walk there, you will have less disturbance in those more sensitive areas. And I personally think that the Chase, the AONB, the Council, Staffordshire Wildlife Trust, all the conservation bodies just need to be more robust on this. sorry to call it as it is. Where to park all those cars? In the car parks. Dogs. I'm a dog owner. I've got a dog. I walk my dog all over the place. I don't like having my dog on a lead, but I know if I'm on Cannock Chase in May, my dog will be on a lead, because I don't want my dog running up to a nightjar nest, disturbing the stone chats, bothering the skylarks. But a lot of people quite rightly don't understand that. People need to be told to put their dogs on a lead at the right time, in the right place. And if they don't, in my opinion, they should be fined or they should be banned from the chase. It's responsible management of the site. And you can't do that, probably. I can say it, they're all I like, because I don't live in the chase and I'm not employed by you. So in that respect, I think that people need to be more responsible. And people like Karen, the ranger that I interviewed, have got an incredibly tough job. When I was there, we were chatting away about the problems with the chase and the problems with mountain biking, how there are lots of trails for all the mountain bikers, but they're bored with those trails. They want to create their own. So by smashing a trail through some birch woodland, all of a sudden that willow warbler is disturbed. And what you're doing is you're ruining that habitat. Let's not beat about bush. You're ruining that habitat. You're fragmenting it. You're breaking it up. It's death by 1,000 cuts. So cutting down where people can cycle is really important. And 2.5 million people visiting the site. It's frankly huge. So just to finish, what is the state of our nature? Well, we all know, and Francis said at the start, that, I mean, it's not very good in Britain. I mean, we are a nation of nature lovers, but we are one of the EU's most nature depleted countries. That's why wildlife sites like Cannock Chase are supremely important, and they have to be conserved. They have to be protected for the benefit of wildlife, not necessarily access. When we talk about all these sites, when for example, the forests were going to be nationalised, everyone was talking about, oh, we won't be able to access them. It's not about access to a certain extent. It's about nature conservation, because without controlling access, we can't control nature conservation. I find myself getting angry. So we live in the most nature depleted state, country. How can we improve that? By getting people to understand they have responsibilities when they visit Cannock Chase. They have to stay on the bike trails. They have to put their dogs on a lead. They have to pick up their litter. Otherwise, there should be consequences. Anyway, enjoy the conference. A quick few thanks. Anne Elphick is a very good friend of mine, a massive, passionate advocate of the chase. These are almost all her pictures, apart from my dad, picture of my dad, and also West Midlands Ringing Group have contributed a couple of nightjar pictures, and a few people on Flickr as well. Thank you for letting me use your pictures as well. I'm around for a question and answer session later, and I shall hand you over back to Francis. So sorry to get political, sorry to get slightly angry, but sometimes you just need to say it how it is.
Thanks so much, Mike, and thanks for getting political. I think it's so important, which is really the points I was trying to make earlier on, and I'm sure it'll come out through the rest of the day. We're moving on now. We're going to take questions at the end of the next two talks, and the next is Tony Watson, who's Head of Visitor Services and Communications at the Lake District National Park Authority. Well, having been up in the summer to the Lake District, I know there are problems there too. The Lake District National Park is England's most visited national park, and Tony Watson is going to share with us their particular challenges and the solutions that they're putting in place. So over to you, please, Tony, and very welcome. Thank you for coming.
Good morning, and thank you, Francis, for inviting me to speak. Due to some technical issues and power cuts, Anna is going to drive my presentation for me. So my name's Tony. I'm Head of Visitor Services and Communications for the Lake District National Park Authority, and I've been leading on our visitor response as a direct result of the changes that were brought about by COVID-19. Anna, if you wouldn't mind advancing, please. So many of you will have been to the Lake District, and we have always been one of the most visited places. And I thought it would be useful for you, and hopefully not too boring, to quickly go through a timeline of some changes that we've made to try and better cope with the visitors, and to build on some of the points from Mike, minimise impacts on landscape, but also taking into account we're a national park and a national resource. Anna, would you mind advancing, please? Thank you. So I think it's fair to say pre-COVID, we had visitor management in silos. So you would have a police team dealing with things in one place. You'd have National Trust dealing with things on their land. You would have United Utilities, our water company, dealing with things on their property. And there was very little formal connectivity between those teams on how to deal with things. To put some context in, the Lake District in a normal year, 12 months, will receive 19 million visitors a year. We'll receive about 19 million visitors in a 12-month period. In 2020, we received 19 million visitors between the end of lockdown in June and September. So the level of pressure we received was exceptional. So we went through 3 effective years of changing the way in which we do things. I would characterize 2020 as being a year of good grief, how do we cope with this, and forming a plan. 2021 was working together in a longer term plan, and 2022 is turning that crisis into a business as usual, we work together in a more integrated way. So I thought I'd just cover off a few of the things we've done, and I'm here for questions at the end as well, as I don't want to bore you too much. Anna, would you mind advancing, please? Thank you. So biggest change has been teamwork. I'm head of visitor services for the National Park. We have 19 million visitors. We've always had visitors from Wordsworth era, lots of them. Before COVID, I could name 1 police officer probably in Cumbria. I knew a couple of rangers in other organisations. Now I have great networks with so many different organisations, and we truly do work as a team. And the picture here is up at the Honister Pass, where we had some of our multi-agency work that still happens today. And I'll cover that off more if we could advance, please, Anna. So in 2020, the first thing we spotted was we were a hotbed of people breaking lockdown rules. So you would have people traveling from around the country and causing significant visitor tensions. To give you context as well, we have 40,000 residents and 19 million visitors. So in my role of trying to manage the visitor pressure against our local communities, it was an exceptionally challenging time. What you see here is a photo of a multi-agency patrol where there was 200 different staff from every agency you can think of going out, providing community reassurance during lockdown and providing a bit of visible presence so that we're able to say to people, we're here, if you've got any worries, let us know. And that active chasing of problems was the first time we've ever approached that, proactively addressing it. And we found that it really helped with the way in which we developed the plan over the years ahead. You wouldn't mind advancing, Anna? So the first thing we did was we launched a central point to ask for help, an email address that was monitored by a team of staff that work from 8 AM until midnight every day. And that has received 23,000 requests over the last 2 years. We've got a triage team now that work with 230 contacts from every agency in a WhatsApp group who respond to issues that occur in the landscape, and we dispatch staff directly to deal with things as they occur. And that working together quickly and nimbly to remove community tensions also builds on some of the pressures Mike was alerting to us to. So if we are aware of someone's about to cut a tree down, we no longer have a form to fill in and a long inter-organisational phone call. We WhatsApp the nearest member of staff, whatever organisation they're from, to go along and to stop the tree being cut down, the sheep from being bothered by a dog off its leash or any other thing. So that's been a big innovation for us. If you wouldn't mind progressing forward, please, Anna. We also needed to work together as a group. So the first thing we did the end of 2020, what was our year of trying to cope, was we formed 3 specific groups: a tactical visitor management group, a car park delivery group, and a comms group. These groups meet every week and continue to meet every week, and they are comprised of every agency from police, fire, mountain rescue teams, landscape teams, National Trust teams, rangers, and they're able to discuss an evaluation that we do every single week of pressures that occur within the landscape and how we can all work together, not arguing about which agency should deal with it first, just simply what is the most efficient way of dealing with a problem to reduce impacts on our communities, to reduce impacts on our landscape. But also, very importantly, we know that a lot of visitors that we have coming have had a horrid time during lockdown, and we are extremely cautious to vilify visitors when we know that many of the people we see coming that do things that we don't like have never been in the landscape before, because what they would normally be doing isn't there. We did such as a trip to Spain or a holiday to a festival. 67% of our visitors in 2020 said they'd never been before. And when you think we had 19 million in just a 3-month period, it gives an exchange of why we need a lot of work to happen centrally on education about how to conduct yourselves in the landscape. If you wouldn't mind advancing, please, Anna. The Tactical Visitor Management Group, as we said, had a significant representation, and it's enabled us to form a series of action plans for each area. Anyone that's been in the Lake District will know Windermere is a particular pressure point. Windermere had its own plan that's covered off keeping car parks within areas of built-up landscape, having specific patrols, using hard landscaping to prevent people driving onto sensitive habitats and triple SIs. We were also successful in drawing down funding from central government because we argued that the direct health implication of COVID-19 was going to be stress and problems for our communities, and also the spread of the coronavirus. We spent that 390,000 on mitigating visitor pressures throughout Cumbria, and all organisations donated officer time to support that. If we could advance, please. So some examples of key achievements. We worked to increase our car parking capacity by over 5,000 spaces at peak. Importantly, building on what Mike was saying, we made sure that they were in rural service centres predominantly. So they were in places where there was infrastructure to support extra car parking, toilets, retail. They weren't out in open landscape. We were aware that many of the visitors we're experiencing were causing what was politely phrased as inappropriate toileting. So we provided 200 eco toilets to reduce the pressures on our water quality and issues such as that. We provided signage very quickly. A local parish council could ask for a sign and it would be developed and delivered within a week. We had a lot of problems with motorhomes. All of the motorhomes that were travelling up that would normally travel to Europe were in the Lake District. And at one point we had 3,500 motorhomes parked within Cumbria. So to prevent that, we developed a strategy that also included, which we're continuing, free grey and black water waste disposal services. Sorry for the typo. We've launched a volunteer support team who specifically deal with visitor pressures, numbering in the 200s. They are located at all key pressure points and they continue to work. They've just finished their half-term duties. They give visitors with guidance on where to go, what to do, what not to do, and how to get the best out of their visit. We developed some new park and ride schemes for the first time. So we're able to connect some of those new larger central car parks with rural bus services, including free transport. We've run multi-agency patrols around key visitor pressures. So you would have, your community would never be complaining. They'd be complaining they were seeing too many people from the EFA agencies, whereas normally they would complain they'd not seen us for a while. And we'd also placed additional rangers on lakes and fells. TikTok, unfortunately, has driven a lot of people to take risks on Scawfell Pike and on Helvellyn. So we have additional rangers on there to prevent people taking what we would the example we always used was people going up in Crocs and t-shirts when it's snowing on Scawfell Pike. So our rangers would intervene there and dedicated time. If you wouldn't mind advancing, please, Anna. We have got a evaluation document so that I don't continue to bore you all, which we will circulate, which gives a lot more details on what we've done. But I thought it would be fair to share the key learnings. How we work together on visitors in your area is important. And if you're doing it in a silo, you're not being efficient. So if you have a lot of visitors, we would suggest that formation of a tactical visitor group that includes the police, landowners, working together regularly to address problems will both protect the landscape and reduce any negative impacts for communities. Volunteers are the best humans, the best sign you can put up. And if you want to change behaviours and improve people's understanding of a landscape, volunteers, we have found, are the best way of doing it. Multi-agency work often finds things that we don't know, that don't come in through the email. The TripAdvisor effect is people only complain when they're 1 angry or 10 very happy. And we found that by going out and working without a brief, without an agenda, and just going and parking up with 3 different branded vehicles. So for you, that could be one of yours, a Forestry England and the police vehicle. You will find that you discover things before they get to that 10 out of 10 crisis level. And we've worked a lot with other national parks, and by dropping our ego somewhat and listening to what other people do, but also doing things like this and trying to share and be helpful, we found that there is a collaborative way of working that can improve things. And that's broadly what I think I would share with you. And I'm very happy. I think we're asking questions at the end, and I will pause there.
Thank you very much, Tony. That was really very interesting to learn about what happens in a very pressured national park. I'm moving back to Ian now, who's going to set the scene for this afternoon's presentations, but he's first of all going to give some observations about our visitors and visitor management on the Chase. So over to you now, please.
Thanks, Francis. I seem to be struggling with my screen at the moment. Bear with me. Is that sharing?
Not yet, Ian, no.
How's that?
No.
No?
I can
Oh
jump
dear.
in if you need me to.
I'll just try once more. Hold on. Yeah, oh, hold on.
Yep,
I think
that's
I've cracked
working.
it.
Yep, that's coming.
Brilliant. Thanks very much. Lovely. Thank you. Yeah, sorry you got to hear from me again. I'll keep it sharp and snappy, I hope. So yes, I wanted to show a few slides just to set the scene for what you're going to hear this afternoon in terms of the initiatives that we've got underway to try to change people's perceptions and behaviours. So what I'm going to briefly cover, I'm going to say a few words about who our visitors are and what our appeal is, look at recreational demand on the Chase, briefly cover the costs of recreation, what might be future drivers, and then summarize briefly the approaches to visitor management. I like these old pictures. Cannock Chase has actually got a very long history of use for leisure and pleasure. I mean, for 800 years, it was used for hunting and shooting, firstly by royalty, then by the bishops of Lichfield and Coventry, and then by the rich and privileged. And that use for hunting and shooting carried on right into the second half of the 19th century. And it might be a little known fact that Cannock Chase has a rather unfortunate record. It holds the UK record for the number of black grouse shot in a single day. 252 birds were shot on Cannock Chase on one day in 1860. You won't see black grouse on Cannock Chase now. You won't see red grouse on the Chase either, which is rather sad. Ordinary people, if I can use that phrase, started to use the Chase for air and recreation, to escape from the hard graft during the week, probably for the last 150 years. What's interesting when you look at these old photos is that they always came out in their Sunday best. They're all very well dressed, aren't they? And if you're wondering where this image is taken, this is Milford Common. You won't see this view now. The hills are covered in trees, but just one example of the way in which the landscape has changed for various reasons. So we know a little bit more about our visitors today. Mike mentioned the figure of 2.5 million. That's the figure that we tend to give for the number of visitors that we receive each year. It's worth just thinking about the context of that. We receive more visitors than the Cairngorms National Park receives in a year. The Cairngorms is the largest national park in Britain. They receive 1.92 million visitors a year. And I reckon that in terms of density of footfall, we receive between 4 to 5 times greater density of footfall than the number of visitors to the Lake District National Park. So just to put our numbers into context, a huge number of people coming to a very small area, just 69 square kilometers. I'll come back to that figure of 2.5 million in a little bit later on. In terms of where people come from, I mean, most of them are local, within 6K boundary of the AONB. Most people arrive by car. Public transport to and from the Chase isn't particularly great. In terms of who visits the Chase, about half of the visitors are between 41 and 60. 80% are return visitors, so it's a very popular place to come back time and again, just as Mike did for over many years. He visited the Chase. More than half of the people visit it weekly. And in terms of what they come for walking. That's the most popular activity, followed by dog walking, cycling, and horse riding. In terms of the appeal of it, I mean, Mike was really enthusiastic about and explaining, what enthused him as a kid coming onto the Chase. So people come for the peace and tranquility. It's a very accessible place. It's the closest protected landscape for people living in the West Midlands area. You've got Peat Park to the north, Shropshire Hills to the west, but Cannock Chase is the most accessible one to that large population. 3.2 million people live within a 1-hour drive. When they come here, about 58% of Chase is what's called open access land. So people have the right to roam on foot over more than half of Cannock Chase. And we have 157 kilometres of public right-of-way. And when you get onto the Chase, there are a number of attractions. Obviously, there's the historic Shugborough Estate, Cannock Chase Country Park, Cannock Chase Forests, Castle Ring, Iron Age Hill Fort, and so on. So there's an awful lot to appeal to people. And obviously, when people come here, they come for their, to make themselves feel better, for their health and well-being, but they're actually also supporting local businesses. Every pound they spend locally goes into the local economy. And I've just had some figures back which surprised me. The total direct spend by staying and day visitors to the area comes to £47.2 million a year, which is quite a bit higher than I thought. So almost £50 million is spent on accommodation, food, recreation, shopping and transport in the AONB. So, the visitors are important for the local economy. Just coming back to that figure of 2.5 million visitors, the earliest figures that I've been able to find for numbers, estimates of numbers have come to the Chase is 2000. That seems to be the first time a visitor survey was done. And they estimated that the numbers then were 1.27 million. The next survey took place in 2012, and it had almost doubled. The estimate then was 2.35 million in 2012. Today, we give the figure of 2.5 million. I suspect that's quite a cautious figure, and I suspect the actual number is quite a bit higher than that. The SAC partnership, as part of their evidence base, estimate that we're going to see at least a 15% increase in visitors over the next decade by 2032, due to the extra house building that's going to take place in and around the AONB. So that would take it up to at least about 2.885 million visitors a year. And those numbers on that diagram are just for the open Chase. So they exclude the visitors who are coming to the individual attractions, such as Shugborough, which has 250,000 visitors alone. The Wolseley Centre Wildlife Trust has 90,000 visitors. So the popularity of Cannock Chase has been increasing, and it's projected to increase still further. So more and more people are coming to Cannock Chase. They value it, they get great benefits from it. But as you've heard from other speakers, it comes at a cost. And Frances talked about some of those in her introduction. So path widening and erosion, wildlife disturbing, disturbance, eutrophication, the nutrient enrichment from people's dogs going to the toilet on the chase, damage to heritage, wildfires, litter, visual intrusion from things like car parks and so on. And people don't probably appreciate it, but when they come onto the chase, they do have unintended consequences. So they are eroding landscape quality. Natural and historic assets are in unfavorable condition. There's a loss of peace and tranquility. And it can compromise people's experience from when they come onto the chase. And it also puts pressures on the landowners, the local authorities, and the emergency services. You can find all this evidence has been recorded by the SAC partnership over the last 10 years. And you can find those reports online. They're in the public domain. And whilst I was preparing for this presentation, I looked through that evidence base and I pulled out these two maps, which for me sort of bring home to me the challenges. The map on the left shows the tracks, all the tracks on Cannock Chase, and I mean it's just a huge density of tracks. There's hardly anywhere that is undisturbed and not accessible by tracks. And in some places there's quite a concentration of them. The map on the right is an environmental sensitivity heat map. So the redder the area, the higher the degree of environmental sensitivity. And the thick line in red is the European Site of Wildlife Importance. And you know, if you look at these two maps together, you can see that the greatest concentration of tracks, and therefore the highest visitor use, is within the areas that are the most sensitive environmentally. And each of these dots is one of the 123 car parks on Cannock Chase. And again, you can see that they coincide with the areas of high environmental sensitivity. We need to recognize that when people come to the chase for recreation, they are coming into one of the country's most valued landscapes. It is a protected landscape. It's one of 34 nationally protected areas of outstanding natural beauty. We have a statutory duty to conserve and enhance it. There are various designations within the AONB which are shown on this map. So the Cannock Chase Special Area of Conservation covers around 20% of the area. We have sites of special scientific interest, scheduled monuments, historic parks and gardens, and so on and so forth. A highly valued landscape for multiple reasons. And the landowners have legal requirements to protect and conserve those environmental assets. So we've seen that recreational demand is going to increase. What other kind of trends might we also anticipate? I mean, we're living through a global crisis at the moment. We also have economic hardships coming our way. So are we going to see more staycations? Are people going to not want to travel abroad? I suspect we probably will see a higher level of people taking breaks at home, so we can expect even more pressure on our protected landscapes. I never cease to be amazed by the ingenuity of people in terms of the types of recreational activities they want to pursue. I'm surprised, for example, that we don't see e-scooters on the chase, or segways. You know, you can't really anticipate what new recreational device people are going to come up with. Francis talked about nighttime cycling, and there is evidence from the work that the Nightjar guys have been doing that mountain biking at night and the use of headlights does disturb nightjars. And there's no downtime for Cannock Chase, no time for it just to have a sleep, you know, refresh itself before you get back to the daytime again. People use the chase 24 hours a day. Climate change, what are the impacts of that? The habitats on the chase might be less resilient. They might be more susceptible to to things like wildfires. The visitor seasons might extend as well. So, you know, if they decline a bit, you know, come the autumn, you know, the autumn comes later and later and the spring comes earlier and earlier, then the visitor season is going to be lengthened. I've mentioned about the health and well-being benefits, which are great. We might see more social prescribing, green prescribing by doctors for people to get out and have physical exercise in these places. We've talked about the Glover review and protected landscapes being more inclusive, relevant and accessible. We need to factor that into account. How do we make these places a landscape for everyone? And then Frances mentioned in her introduction to today, at the moment, we only have one statutory purpose: to conserve and enhance natural beauty. I think the chances are that as a result of the Glover review, we're going to have a second statutory purpose, which will be to provide for public enjoyment and to improve understanding. What does that mean for us? That's a whole new kettle of fish if it becomes a statutory duty, and will have big resource implications. So my penultimate slide is, you know, what is our approach? I was very interested in what Tony talked about in terms of their joined up approach between the different agencies. I think that's essential. When COVID started and we had the first lockdowns, we formed a landowner and emergency services group, and we've met from time to time. We don't meet in a regular way like Tony does. Maybe that's something that we need to consider in terms of what more can we do. Yes, the difficult issues of visitor management infrastructure, rationalising the number of car parks, and so on, to focus away from the sensitive areas. We need to look at visitor management services, people on the ground, wardens and so on. And I was interested in what Tony said about the use of volunteers in this respect. And then the last three things, which we're going to hear more about this afternoon, if you like, are the softer elements. How do we generate a greater sense of place and a greater sense of pride in Cannock Chase so that people want to look after it? How do we make a more positive visitor welcome experience? How do we get information out to people? And how do we educate them? And you'll hear more examples about that this afternoon. So finally, it's a very complex picture, recreation and visitor management, and it's got many challenges. On the one hand, people get health and well-being benefits from coming onto the chase. It makes us all feel better, which is fantastic. Also, visitors support the local economy, which is really important. But on the other hand, we must protect the very resource that people want to come and enjoy: the chase, its special landscape, the wildlife and heritage. I'm certain about one thing: doing nothing is not an option. And finally, we mustn't forget, as I mentioned at the beginning, that we rely on partnerships. We won't achieve our aims without local support. So it is actually essential that people do come onto the chase to experience it, because only then are they going to understand it, are they going to appreciate it, are they going to want to care for it and want to protect it. Thank you, Frances.
Thank you very much, Ian. That was a good explanation and passionate thoughts. I'm bringing together the three speakers. We're slightly running over time, but could Mike, Tony and Ian come back to take questions until we break for lunch at 12 o'clock? And Julia and Richard will do their usual trick. Who's starting?
I can start.
Okay, you start, Richard.
So the first question came in sort of about 11 o'clock this morning. So obviously that was before all this morning's presentations. The Sherbet Trail should be promoted, not removed. It's it's an absolute gem for the whole community to admire, whether that is by walking, riding or cycling. As long as everyone stays on the paths, why is it not being promoted and inclusive for everyone to enjoy? Embracing cyclists on the existing paths is better than off-piste.
I'll pick that one up, unless there are anyone else on the call from any of our partners who wants to chip in. This is part of the overall strategy to try to steer mountain bikers away from the most sensitive areas. The Sherbrooke Trail does coincide with the European Special Area for Conservation. Forestry England has established the new Perry's Trail in the Birches Valley Centre, and part of the mitigation package, the legacy package, was then to try and reduce mountain biking use within the SAC. And that does mean making the difficult choice of not promoting the Blue Trail, as it's called. It doesn't mean that cyclists won't be able to go on it, because it is still a designated bridle way. It just means that it won't be protected. We have to make a choice, and that's the choice that's been made.
Thank you. Next one, please.
So there are a couple here, obviously, about the plans for the car parking on the Chase. And Paul Beecham is referring to concerns about potential impacts on inclusion, and might there be more outcomes such as people cycling onto the Chase to reach those parts that are a bit more distant on foot. And his question is, how will the AONB ensure that it takes account of and addresses such concerns going forward?
Okay, it's down to me again. I think I'll make a stab at it. If anyone from the SAC partnership is on the call, as I say, they might want to chip in. My understanding is that individual proposals within the car parking plans will be taken forward in a sequence around the Chase, and as each of those schemes comes forward, there will be local consultation to seek people's views about whether it's a specific closure or whether it's proposals to actually improve that. So there will be opportunities for local communities to make their views known as each of those comes forward and the designs take place. I should point out that there will be still an awful lot of car parks around the Chase and plenty of opportunities for people to still be able to access the Chase. We're just asking people to make small adjustments to their behaviours in order to try and keep it special.
Thank you. Next one.
I might just
Sorry, do you want
add
to
as
come
well,
in?
Francis.
Thanks, Mike.
So I might just add as well that whenever I hear talk about the Cannock Chase, I hear talk of it being an AONB, an SAC, there's triple SIs on the site, and it's a simple equation. Do you want it to maintain an SAC? And if you want to maintain it in SOC, then you have to make tough decisions. And if picking up what Ian was talking about the cycle trail earlier on, I mean, if there's too much disturbance right slap bang through the SAC, then you're going to see a degradation in the quality of the habitat and also a fragmentation of the habitat, which is going to result in a decline of the rare species that you want to conserve. And it's a simple equation. You just have to be bold and make decisions that benefit the wildlife. And what Ian said as well about small adjustments, we're not asking people to stop going to the Chase, stop going to various areas. You're asking to make small adjustments and to think and put the wildlife first. And I personally don't think that's too much to ask.
Thank you very much, Mike. We'll move on. Who's doing the next question? Is that you, Richard?
Yeah. There are quite a number of sort of questions relating to car parking. I'm going to read the next one out. We may have covered it. When will details of the official car parks, charges and car park closures be formally announced? What reactions effect is anticipated from the existing car park closures?
Well, I don't know that. Yeah, how can I answer that? As I mentioned earlier, individual schemes will come forward. I'm just trying to read it. I've lost it on the screen.
It's gone on to the answer tab, Ian, if you have a look there.
Okay. So I lost my train of thought. So yeah, individual schemes will come forward, and then it's up to the individual landowners who own those specific car parks in relation to what they want to do about charging and so on. I mean, in terms of, what's the effect reaction? Well, these are tough decisions, as Mike says. We hope that people will understand this is being done for a good reason. It's being done to ensure that the quality of wildlife and habitats and the experience that people get from Cannock Chase is sustained. As I said, it concluded in my presentation, doing nothing is not an option. We have to do something, and that will make some choices tough and difficult. And some people will like those choices, some people won't. Hopefully the majority will.
Thank you very much, Ian. I'm just going to ask Tony to come in here, if I may. The reason particularly is that I was a member of the Peak Park National Park Authority for 9 years, I suppose. And we had this as a national park, we had this very tough decision making to do on, first of all, the location of the car parks and closure of the sort of self-set car parks, and then on charging. And it'd be interesting to know what approach the Lake District has taken, because I know that you as a user, I know that you have charges on the car parks.
Sure. I think the battle that you might face is where the review brings you with your purposes. So we have a first and a second purpose. So our first purpose is effectively nature protection and landscape protection. And our second purpose is promoting opportunities to discover and explore the landscape. And our answer, although our landscape's slightly different in terms of scale, in short summary, our planning policies encourage you to place car parks within locations that are already what we call rural service centres. So they are in villages and towns. So if you were to come and ask for an extra car park in Windermere, you would more than likely get support for that. But if you asked for an extra car park in Wasdale, a permanent car park, you would not get that support. And we use all of our car parking income to support the work in the park. And that's the key piece. So half of the national parks work on the ground is funded from commercial income, not government funding. So 52% is funded from our commercial income. So we're able to convey that message. So that's the key for us, is not having car parks spread across the rural landscape. It is encouraging people to park in a place and then providing routes for active transport, whether that's accessible pathways, encouraging people to bring their bike, park and then ride somewhere, or providing buses, park and rides, other shuttle activities. That's that. So ours is more complex because of the second purpose, but broadly it's keep car parks in a dense location that doesn't ruin the rural landscape and encourages people to travel from there.
Thank you so much. That's no very interesting. We'll move to the next question.
If I could just chip in,
Mike again, yeah.
I think what Tony's saying is absolutely fantastic. The fact that they're concentrating the car parks and giving people the opportunity to explore the landscape beyond is exactly where Cannock Chase should be going, rather than having small 3 or 4 parking spaces next to the most precious areas. And in terms of parking, there are people here who know far more about the chase than me and about the politics of the chase than me, which actually puts me in a good position. Because I say, you want to go and watch Stafford Rangers, how much is it to watch Stafford Rangers? 15, 20 pounds to go to Marston Ground to go and watch them. How much is it for a day out to Alton Towers? You take a family of 4, 2 children, 2 adults, you'll blow £150. How much is it to go to Cannock Chase for the day and have an amazing experience. I'll tell you how much, absolutely nothing. It doesn't cost you a penny. All right, you pay indirectly by council tax or your own taxes, but it doesn't cost you anything. And if people start fighting having to pay for parking in certain concentrated areas, then they need to be told. All right, then, I'll tell you what, park where you want and we'll charge you 50 quid. I think we just have to be a bit bolder and do what Tony's doing, but also as well, make people aware that this landscape is free, but it's not free to trash. That's a really, really important point that Tony's made. And I think the Chase should be following that as well.
Thank you. It's real food for thought, the points that you're making, and thank you for those. Another one?
Well, Tony Watson has his hand up, so I'm going to suggest that perhaps he comes in there.
Oh, right, okay, can't see that.
Apologies, it was just to give a total answer. The only bit we would that changes what I've said is where we know that there is pressure that is occurring that will take longer term strategic change to mitigate the impact on the landscape, where a car park might be the only solution for that year to stop more significant damage. So an example being some of the lakes this year were full of paddle boards and people would not travel, and we needed a longer run at that to get the buses set up. So if you don't have a solution, making sure that you have a non-nature impacting car park can sometimes be the best solution, but it should never be a long-term solution. It should be a let's get the buses planned for next year. But I wanted to give an honest answer because I know, Francis, you've been, at times we have said the best way of protecting that landscape is to take the cars off the SSSI, Wasdale for example, and put them into a place a bit further back in a car park to protect that. But that would then trigger with us a process to go, that's not an acceptable medium-term solution. It just gets us now, and it would trigger a process. I just wanted to be honest.
Thank you very much. I'm conscious that it's nearly 12 o'clock. I can take one more question. We've got 13 on my list here. But I think we will end on time.
Sorry, I've got one here which says that is there not a concern that if the car parks are, so it says eliminating casual pull-in parking to specific areas makes perfect sense. But is there a risk that by taking them away from those areas, you're going to reduce the understanding of the average visitor if they're then parking in an area that doesn't have that same character and the wildlife that's there?
I'm not sure I quite understand. I'm not sure I quite understand the question really.
Is there not a concern that reducing interaction with the areas of the type that Mike Dilger identified and promoted for an alternative area is only going to reduce the understanding of the average visitor and create two tiers of visitors, is what exactly the question says.
I think there's still scope. Go on, Mike.
No, I'm only presuming that the question means that if people aren't going to enjoy the areas with the high conservation value, where the adders are, where the nightjars are, then they won't know about them and they won't become interested. Yeah. I think it's down to question of the rangers working hard, interpretive boards, information at kind of Brockton or at Milford Common, or all the visitor centres, the areas where people coalesce at the car parks, to make people aware of where these places are, and they are free to walk there and go and enjoy them. And I know that some of the rangers do guided walks. There's every possibility there. But Francis made the point earlier on that a lot of people aren't aware of the high nature conservation value of the Chase. And I just think it's more signage. It's shouting louder. It's making people aware of how important the wildlife is. The wildlife needs to be moved up the agenda in Cannock Chase, beyond that of dog walking and cycling, because without the wildlife, all you've got is the habitat. You've got an empty habitat with nothing in it. So I think we need to bang the drum louder for the wildlife, so that people are able to visit the wildlife, are able to do it responsibly, feel enabled to do it, but can't just drive their 4x4 right up to where the nightjars are churring.
Thank you, Mike. I'm going to stop the morning session here now. I think we'll have time to pick some of the questions up again this afternoon. I sincerely hope so. And we're going to resume, it will reopen at 1:45. I think Anna's going to explain how it'll all happen, and the rolling presentation on the screen. Is that okay, Anna?
Yep, I'm here. So I'm looking after what's going on in the background for today's event. You've had a lot of listening to do so far, so we've got a little activity for you for while you're having your sandwiches, if you'd be so kind. So hopefully you'll see on screen that I have shared the tool we're going to use. Now you can't click on it yet, but I'll give you a link in a moment so that you can get to it. So there are 5 questions here that will help the AONB going forward. Your answers will help them think about their future activities. So I'm just going to give you a very speedy definition. All you need to do to add your comment, and the comments are anonymous, is to click on the plus sign below the question that you're interested in, and you type your answer and you click save. And you can add as many comments to each question as you like, and you can, we'd really appreciate you putting a thought in each one if you have something to add. And then after lunch, we are going to come back and do a little exercise with this, which will take 15 minutes at the beginning of this afternoon. So the link is now in chat. So if you could click on that now to make sure you've got it over lunchtime, that would be great. We'll reopen the session at 1:45, but we won't get started till 2 o'clock. And it's the same link that you came in on this morning. So the email you had this morning will get you in for this afternoon. Thanks, Francis.
Thank you very much. And thank you for everybody attending this morning. And I do hope you will feel able or have the time to come back this afternoon, because we've got some really interesting and very important speakers and thoughts to share this afternoon. And I hope you enjoy your lunch. Thank you very much.